Okay. Hello, everybody. Namaskaram. Welcome back to the We Are Not Lonely podcast. Today's topic is something that I've wanted to explore for a very long time. It's about the concept of cultural appropriation. What exactly caused this? Well, back when I was studying yoga, this is February 2023, I spent a month interacting with a bunch of people, most of whom were foreign students of this practice of Ashtanga yoga. And some of them raised some rather interesting points. I remember meeting this Israeli who had settled in Australia, and he was telling me about how he's a bit of an anomaly in that circle because most of the people that practice yoga in Australia are mostly rich white women. Mostly older rich white women who have absolutely no idea that the origin of yoga comes from India. And he sort of had a question to ask me because at that point I was one of the only Indians sitting at the table. And he asked me, how do you feel about all this? I think my answer, I had to summarize at the end of the argument. I gave it a bit of thought. And this one young lady had a bit of an issue with that as well. She jumped in to say, oh, you always have to get the last word in. My thought on the matter was such. It doesn't matter to me who practices yoga, who studies yoga, as long as they acknowledge the fact that it comes from Vedic traditions. Vedic yoga, it comes from Sanatan Dharma. It is connected to the Hindu fold. Now, this itself is the issue that I wanted to talk about because in my journey, I've come across people who have made this rather interesting claim that, oh, Shiva can't be Hindu. Shiva is not Hindu. How can you say that Shiva is Hindu? And I'm going to have to give you a bit of context to this. At certain points, even Sadhguru from Isha Foundation has made this particular claim that Shiva is not a Hindu god. And to take it further, there has been this Tamil actor called Kamal Haasan, who's gone on record to say that the Cholas were not Hindu kings, despite the fact that they worship Shiva. So we've gotten to this point where people have started culturally appropriating the devatas that we worship. And they are telling us that, oh no, this person, this being is not your God. It represents a certain form of energy, and so on and so forth. And that's the level to which we have sunk. That's the level to which we have fallen. Now, I do have several disagreements with Sadhguru, and this is one of them. To say that Shiva is not a religious figure, rather he's a form of energy that anyone can worship. While he is accurate in the idea that he's a form of energy that anyone can worship and all that, I do disagree with the fact that, the idea that Shiva is not of the Vedic and Indic fold. Now, how did this particular conversation come about? I actually had this conversation with a friend as well who had come to India for yoga. And he had this beautiful logic where he used my own logic against me. And I'm trying to expand on that. I'm still trying to understand this entire thing. And this is something I'm going to be exploring in a great deal more detail as time goes by. But for now, let's explore this topic as it is. Alright. So there's this one particular text that I ended up bringing up in front of him. It's called the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. It is a beautiful text that contains 112 meditations, ways to meditate. It's a conversation between Shiva and Shakti, that is, Lord Shiva and his divine consort, Devi Parvati, where they're discussing the nature of reality, they are discussing the nature of Shiva himself. So this is after they've been speaking about the Rudraya Mala. So the text itself begins with this shloka. Shri Devi Uvacha Shrutam Deva Maya Sarvam Rudrayamala Sambhavam Trikabhedam Asheshena Sarat Saravibhagashaha. So Devi is basically saying, "O Lord, I have heard in detail about all that you have revealed about Rudra and his union with his Shakti, which is emerged from the Rudrayamala Tantra." And she also goes on to say that she's understood Trika, which is the quintessence of all knowledge. But she has a further question, and she goes on to ask Shiva, "Adyapi na nivrittho me samshayah parameshwara kim rupam tatvato deva shabdarashi kalamayam." So she goes on to say that despite everything that I've heard, I still have some more doubts. She's asking Shiva, what is your actual essence? Are you the power, the energy that is contained in sound? Are you the sound? Are you the power, energy within sound? How can I understand this reality that you are? Right? She's trying to understand the true essence of reality because Shiva is the ultimate. And she's trying to understand the true essence of Shiva himself. So Shiva tells her, and I'm going to have to give you a bit of context. Now the Sanskrit word Rava means sound. And Bhairava means beyond sound. So what Shiva says is, my true nature is not sound. My true nature is beyond sound. And then he goes on to discuss this particular thing in the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. And he gives 112 methods, techniques, because Tantra, among other things, also means technique. 112 techniques by which one can meditate and reach this particular consciousness, this Bhairava Tattva. Now, I'm not a person who has studied the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, but this is the most basic understanding of what I've been able to get from reading the verses. I do know a little bit of Sanskritam as well. And I do watch something. You should definitely check out the Sanskrit channel where he goes in depth about how the conversation goes between Shiva and Shakti. So, a man, my friend, actually uses my logic against me. He's like, how can you say that Shiva belongs to Hinduism? He's beyond sound itself. So, to break that down, I'm going to have to get into the whole situation with Sanatana Dharma. Now, the idea is that there is the absolute, the impersonal, with no attributes and so on and so forth. This is sort of what is described everywhere else. Kind of similar to the Abrahamic concept of God, Not like a figure that sits up in heaven and judges everybody. But no, actually this goes beyond the Abrahamic concept of God, I suppose. Without attributes, without concept, without form. It's a very abstract concept. And the sages understood that this particular concept, this reality, this is the pure reality, the Nirguna Brahman, I believe is the technical term. The absolute without attributes. Yeah, that which is beyond time and space, that has no form, etc., etc. Now, understanding that, the sages decided, it's difficult for the regular person, the mortal, to sort of connect to this idea of the ultimate. So what can we do? Now, the same Nirguna Brahman actually takes on forms as Saguna Brahman. In this particular way, Brahman has a form, identity and purpose. Now, the interesting point is that the worship of Brahman can be done through any deity in Sanatana Dharma. It's the only culture which has this option where you can choose the form with which you can focus on the divine. Why is this form important? Of course, this gives it an easy way for Abrahamical religions to jump in and say, oh, form, idol worship, lower beings, so on and so forth. But the idea is that the mind of the human cannot really conceive of / understand abstract concepts. After a certain point, if I tell you to picture 10,000 humans, it just becomes an undefinable mass. Alright, we're not even talking about 1 lakh or 10 lakhs or 5 lakhs or 5 crores. We're not talking about big numbers. Even if I say like 100 people, you will see a mass, It's difficult after a certain point to visualize even numbers which are quantifiable. So just imagine trying to understand the infinite being that has absolutely no forms. It's kind of a very difficult scenario for most people. Let's say 99.99%. So in this way, having understood that, Sanatana Dharma gives you a way to reach that ultimate, to relate to that ultimate through your devata, through a devata that you worship. Generally speaking, it's called the Ishta, the one that you like. There are other devatas like the ones, Upasana Devata, the one that you're supposed to worship to progress, and so on and so forth. But generally speaking, this concept of Ishta Devata is also a little muddled here and there. In one way, it is used to refer to the Devata that will take you to your ultimate purpose, which is moksha. So Ishta, the worship of the Ishta is supposed to lead you to moksha eventually. That's the end goal of all Sanatana Dharma, of all practices in Sanatana Dharma. It is to get you to moksha. But obviously this is the final goal. Not everybody is ready for that. Some of the people that come to earth are here just for sightseeing and other purposes. They might come here again and again and again. Now here itself I've opened up this Pandora's box of all of these different tangents I can go into. But my essential point is this. The reason that we give God an attribute, we put on a form by which we can relate, we give God a personality. Alright, that's why Shiva is a householder who's also the ultimate yogi. He's detached. He sits in the mountains. Ganga falls from his hair. He has 2 sons, Ganesh and Subramanya. All of this is for us to understand the temperament, to relate to God. It's easier to relate to God. It becomes more personal. Emotions become involved when you bring up all of this. So in that way, it becomes easier to connect with the ultimate. Now, when you're worshipping a devata, each and every devata can be worshipped for a particular purpose or can be worshipped as that ultimate being. And that's the beauty of Sanatana Dharma. You're using any deity, any devata as a stand-in for that divine being. We've kind of departed from the actual topic, which was to talk about cultural appropriation. And the reason that we've come all the way on this particular route is because of this question, is Shiva Hindu? We're like, hey Baba, listen, there is no other culture on this earth that is not Sanatani in origin that has worship of Shiva engraved into their culture as much as we do. We know how to worship Shiva. We know how Shiva likes to be worshipped. He's Abhisheka Priyana. Each god has specific likes and dislikes. For example, you offer Bilpatra and Datura to Shiva. you don't offer that to Vishnu. You know what I'm saying? Each god has things that they like, they dislike. You can offer things that are recommended to be offered, and so on and so forth. When such a thing exists, it kind of becomes, I don't know how to say it. I don't want to strawman the argument. Now, obviously, if you're looking at technicalities, Shiva isn't Hindu because the word Hindu is used to refer to a geographical location, and it's not even Indian in origin. It does not come from our land, it comes from Persia, the word Hindu, because they weren't able to pronounce Sindhu. So they weren't able to pronounce Sa, it became Her, so it became Sindhu. Sindhu became Hindu. So that became a generic term for anybody who lived beyond that particular river and below the mountains. That entire land was known as Hindustan. So in that term, technically Shiva is not Hindu. Okay? But in the context of today, where Hindus are religious faith, is Shiva a Hindu devata? Hindu is now used to refer to a wide culture, wide umbrella of beliefs that encompass Vaidika traditions, Shaiva traditions, Vaishnava traditions, Shakta traditions, Agama, Nikama, Tantra. All of this, Vedic as well, of course. All of this is referred to with the term Hindu. So in this particular term, where we're talking about a particular system of beliefs, which is very vast, Shiva is Hindu. So therefore, case closed, LHS is equal to RHS. I'll see you again. I'm kidding. But this, brings up questions now. Nobody's going to go around and ask, oh, is Jesus Christian God? Somewhere we're going to have to start drawing boundaries, because the point of this ultimate all open thing where anybody's allowed to come in, and I mean, that's a beautiful thing. Vasudeva Kutumbam. There's no other person, there's no other Vasudeva Kutumbam. All living beings, everything in the world are one family. There's no other culture that has this kind of a belief. There's a very clear us versus them in every Abrahamic religion. This is the only one that says Vasudeva Kutumbam. All living beings are one family. They belong to that thing. So, despite the fact that we have this kind of openness, we're going to have to start drawing boundaries, because that's when we start blurring things, and questions like, oh, Shiva, is he Hindu or not, start to creep in. There's this beautiful book written by Dr. Rajiv Malhotra where he talks about all of this. It's called Snakes in the Ganga. There's Invading the Sacred, where he talks about this phenomenon where Westerners come, they take up Indic, Vedic, Tantric practices, they repackage it and they sell it to the West. So, for example, yoga has just become a series of stretches. Pranayama has become cardiac coherence breathing. Cardiac coherence breathing. It's pranayama. Meditation has become mindfulness. All of these terms that have originated in India, that have originated as part of dharmic, Sanatan Dharma, have now been repackaged and sold to the West. Which is really sad if you think about it. But we're all like, okay, let it be. At least they're practicing yoga. Now, taking it a step further, there are certain aspects that have been completely ruined by Westerners dabbling in things that they have no idea about. And I'm just going to talk about two of those. One is this idea of Kundalini, and the second is Tantra. Tantra, which the West always call Tantric sex. That's all they know. That's all they know about this. It's such a deep subject that we're not even going to go into. Like, for example, I began this particular podcast by talking about the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, which talks about 112 techniques / meditations to reach the ultimate divine. Now, Tantra is itself, its entire system of upasana, basically, of worship, of sadhana, by which one can attain moksha. I think I've spoken about the difference between the Vedic and the Tantric path, where the Vedic path generally says yatrasta moksha tatra nasti bhogaha, where you're going after moksha, there is no enjoyment. Bhoga means pleasure / enjoyment. Whereas Tantra is of the belief yogo bhogayate, that is moksha through enjoyment. You don't have to abandon all of this. Now, obviously, this has become corrupted. The only thing that the Westerners know about is tantric sex. That's all they speak about. Every single person. Quite a few people that I've met on this yoga journey have also asked about this. And I was very quick to say, hey, Baba, listen, that's not how it is. It's very deep. There's so much depth in this particular field. There are so many paths in the tantric field itself. Just because one enters does not mean they will be having orgies and drinking wine in graveyards, sitting on top of a corpse. That's not what this path is. There's a great deal of nuance in this particular topic. But all Westerners know is tantric sex, which is really sad, because they have no idea what they're talking about. Talking about Kundalini, that's an entire thing that these Westerners have misappropriated again. Terms like chakra, prana, nadi. I mean, I don't think they'll use things like nadi, but prana, chakra, kundalini have all been misused again by Westerners. Suddenly, it's become this concept that one can do a 2-day workshop somewhere in Thailand and you'll become a certified Kundalini yoga teacher. Whereas sages have been sitting in the mountains for thousands and thousands and thousands of years trying to figure out this essence of reality to arouse this energy so that they can transcend this mortal body and reach the highest states where they become one with that ultimate reality where they can become one. And today, Westerners can get a certificate over a weekend after a 24-hour workshop where they become certified Kundalini experts. It's sad, it's pathetic. It's honestly disgusting. But that is the state of the world. Just be careful, is all I'm going to say. There's so much stupidity out there because of the Kali Yuga. Now, in fact, just before I got onto this particular podcast, I went onto YouTube. I was just looking at certain things about Tantra and all that. And I found this particular course where you can join a Tantra group for $49 per month. And they'll teach you. You'll access over 1,000 hours of teachings about Tantra. I'm guessing this is about philosophy. It's about yoga. But such is the world. Everything has become commercial. This is how it is. This is the Kali Yuga. Everything. This is how things are. Gone are the days where you would sit with a guru. Gone are the days where you would sit with an actual guru. I'm not talking about the Western concept of what a guru is. It's completely misunderstood. Gone are the days where you would sit with a guru, learn at his feet, have discussions, samvad, and understand the essence of reality. It's all gone for now. But I think I'll stop this particular topic over here. Cultural appropriation is vast and there's not much I as an individual can do against it. But I can put the word out there. I can tell people to be careful. Just always question your sources. Try to understand where this knowledge comes from. Like, for example, this usage of mantras, singing mantras and all, it's absolute bogus. You can't just be initiated into a random mantra by some random white person who hasn't even done the work, who hasn't sat down and meditated and formed a personal connection with that particular mantra. They don't even know what upasana is. They don't know what sadhana is. All they know is yoga. And all of a sudden they're experts. It sounds like I'm very bitter about all of this. But I'm still going to stick to the point and say that, spirituality shouldn't be a process by which you make money. If you're a true yogi, there's this whole plethora, there's this pandemic of people just changing their name to yogini or yogi and calling themselves yogis and yoginis when all they do is practice asana. They just practice asana. They don't even do yama, niyama. Third step is asana. Fourth is pranayama. Let's go over that once again. Asana is just the third step. Ashtanga yoga, and Patanjali has never referred to this as Ashtanga yoga. It's something that we refer to it because Ashtanga has 8 limbs. Ashtanga yoga has 8 limbs. And just to put this out there, it was not created by B.K. Iyengar. He was an excellent practitioner of this particular method. Patanjali is also not the original creator of these things. Okay, he's just written Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, where he has compiled all the data that he had from various sources. And he's spoken about it in sutras are aphorisms. They're very cryptic statements which have to be unraveled. Sutra is literally a thread. It has to be unraveled for you to get its full import, which is why you study this under a guru. Okay, so speaking of yoga itself, Ashtanga yoga has 8 limbs. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Those are the 8 limbs of yoga. So there's no point of doing yoga if all you're doing every day is drinking and smoking and all of that. Just putting that out there. Okay. Yoga by itself, if just done as a physical exercise, it will have certain benefits on your physical body. It will bring great clarity to your mind as well, because the mind and the body are linked. There is the mind-body connection. But if you want to take it forward, if you want to take it to its ultimate level, then there are certain practices that you have to do. Yoga alone, just practicing asanas alone, not necessarily a spiritual practice, especially if you don't chant, if you don't meditate. You do have to do mantropasana. You do have to do a lot of sadhana. It's not that easy to reach the ultimate. Everyone thinks that they're perfect beings just because they practice some asanas in the morning. It's not it. Remember the goal. The goal is moksha. In Ashtanga Yoga, the goal is samadhi, which sort of can be linked to the concept of moksha. But we'll get there another time. Alright? There are certain texts that describe this in detail. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras talk about so-called Ashtanga. It's yoga. Talk about yoga. There are other things like Bhagavad Gita is one of the best books that talk about all of this. And I'm not claiming to be an expert. I'm still a student. I've just gone ahead and I've studied a great deal of these books. I'm practicing as well. So I know a little bit that I can share. And I'm not divulging the secrets. It's just like, basic skimming the surface about what all of this is. So there's definitely a need to go beyond just the asanas, just beyond the physical aspect of yoga, because that's when you'll get the true benefits. But if you're happy just performing yoga, just performing asana, then go ahead, be happy. But just remember that you're not a yogi just because you practice asana and pranayama. There's something beyond that. Please understand that. Alright. So I think I'll end it on that particular note. Thank you for listening. Jai Shri Ram, Punarmilam.